So we're going to be talking about responsive images over the next sort of half hour or so. So if that's what you're interested in, you're in the right place. So we've got this problem with all these different screen sizes. How big do we make our images? Sometimes with responsive design skins, you're changing the same image. Sometimes it could be 300 pixels wide, 200 pixels wide, 140 pixels wide. And it generates a bit of a problem because we end up sending too much data to certain types of devices. And it's really not a problem that there's a kind of W3C standard solution to yet. They've been talking about source set for a long time. But even then, if that were to be ratified and implemented, it's still not the perfect solution. So we need sort of some way around this problem. So in order to help sort of demonstrate how we solve this, I'd like to enlist the help of 7 gentlemen to help me. And I found them on the DNN website. You know some of these guys? Exactly. So my magnificent 7 are going to help me demonstrate responsive images. So I've taken them from this page on the DNN software website, and it's the leadership team webpage. So would anyone like to have a guess at the weight of this page? I was to start with, but I'll go for weight in megabytes of that web page. Anyone has a guess? 1 megabyte. Sales starting at 1. Any bids higher than 1? 4 from Leon. Somewhere in between. It's actually. Oh, I've gone past it. Oh, there we go. It's actually 2.4 megabytes. What I've done is I've taken that page and put it into my demonstration. Using the main content, so it's 2.4 megabytes. Okay, so what does 2.4 megabytes mean to customers? Well, this is taken yesterday from Vodacom, which is Vodafone's presence in South Africa, their website, and this is if you take a pay-as-you-go contract, so you're not on a subscription, you don't have an all-you-can-eat data tariff. This is the prices for the bundles. So starting at 15 megabytes. Going all the way up to 2 gigabytes. Okay, so let's translate that into euros, what 2.4 megabytes means. So 29 rand, if I were to take the 100 megabyte tariff, is €2. So 2.4 megabytes is 5 euro cents. Or if we were on that lowest tariff there, it would be 10 euro cents for one web page. So we multiply that by all the web pages we're presenting to people. This can soon rack up. People can incur some charges. So that's just one reason, as well as improved performance, why we want to try and address this problem. So what we're going to show you now is just how to slim down the Magnificent 7. Let's see how skinny we can make them. So the first thing we need to do with DNN 7.3 is make 2 modifications to the current beta installation. The first thing we need to do is change the web.config file. Okay, so where you see the modules section, there's an element there called precondition, and it's basically set to managed handler. So what that means is the module only comes into effect during page processing when the request is for managed code. Now, because we want to do some clever stuff with images which aren't part of managed code, we need to take that precondition out. So that enables our module in order to intercept any requests, including those for images, which is the main ones we're interested in. The second thing we need to do is just make a change to the 51Degrees config file. So we want to make sure we're using version 3 data. This is included in all the versions of our data, the free versions, paid for versions as well. So we just need to enable that. So those are the 2 sort of three techie bits we need. The other change here is in the image optimizer section of 51Degrees config. What this allows us to do is to limit the number of permutations of images that can be generated, and I'll sort of show you how that works in a minute. So this just gives us some control. So with those 3 changes in place, we can now move to some fixed size images. So we want to take Sean from 640 pixels. Where's my browser window? So we want to take him from 640 pixels wide, there he is, to 250 pixels wide, because that's the actual size that the page requires. I'm going to ask Billy to do some typing in a minute, but I'll just do this one for you. If I not put the minus sign, I'll tell you what, Billy, why don't you do the typing? Can you just take out that minus sign for me? And there we go. So what that's just showing you is that the image server is all up and running. It's doing its stuff. It can serve images at any size based on the query string parameters. So with that in mind, what we can do is open the other browser window there, Billy. And if you go to edit mode, we can look at this page. So can you edit that page? Yeah, that's the one. I should say Billy's, thank you, Billy, for volunteering. We had met beforehand, but I haven't asked him what I wanted him to do, so this is all new to him. If we go to the HTML editor, and then if we take that first image there, so it's that image line you've got there. Yeah, and if you could just put question mark width equals 250 on the end for me. Okay, so if you look at the CSS that I've just put in the HTML above, you can see that we're using 250 as the image width because that's the size that the default image is needed at. Okay, so if we can do save, just scroll down a little bit, just up a bit further. And I won't go through and do all of them, because in the interest of time, but you get the idea. It's pretty simple to basically request the image at any size. And it looks the same, but what's happening here is that the resizing of the image is taking place on the web server, not on the browser. So it's taking place on the most powerful computer in the relationship rather than the weakest computer in the relationship. And we're saving having to send that data around. So I just flick back to presentation. So that's the change we've just made. And what that does when we put that across all those images, when we make all our magnificent 250 pixels wide, is we save 0.9 megabytes. So quite a significant saving just by making that simple change to request the image at the specific size. But I hear you all crying a problem. What about responsive design? We can't put the width of the image into the HTML because we don't necessarily know what the width of the image is going to be, because that's going to be set by the CSS, which is going to be variable based on the media queries. So we need a solution to this, which takes us on to part 2. So we can change our URLs again. This time it's a little bit more complicated. What we're going to do is we're going to move the URL for the image into another attribute of the image tag called data-source. So you can see there on the second line, the image URL's moved down. And what we've done is change the width parameter so that it's being requested with the size of auto. So we're not setting a specific size, we're setting it to auto. Okay? And what we're also doing is we're changing the source element so that it's just requesting an empty image, which is just a 1x1 pixel image. Okay? So if we can flick back to the browser, I think it's probably the second one there, isn't it? That's the one. And if you go to where it says the menu leadership team, I'll show you one we've prepared earlier, which is optimized. Yeah, if you see the menu there underneath, we've got optimized. So again, what we're seeing here is the same page with our images displayed nicely. But if we can shrink the window which probably means we need to, there we go, and just make it, say, 2/3 of the screen width.
Oh, and refresh the page.
Yeah, and then refresh the page. So our responsive design media queries have kicked in, and the images are being requested at a smaller size, this time 150 pixels. And if we can right-click on them and then go to Inspect Element, and it's come up on the wrong screen. Yeah. Oh, just right, sorry. Was it? Oh, there we go. Sorry. You just make that a bit. Could we maximize that? So what we can see has happened when we come down to it is the URL's been changed. If we keep scrolling down. So if we can scroll right a little bit. So what's happened there is the picture has been changed. So that the data source is still the same, it's still the same source image, but the source parameter has been changed by a very, very small piece of JavaScript that's gone through and looked for these data source attributes in the image elements. Where they've been set to auto, it's then changed the width to the actual size of the container. So in this case, the image is being requested at 162 pixels of width. So it's precisely optimized for the containing space that it's going to be displayed in. Okay, and all you need to do to make that change is the line that I showed you earlier. So if we flick back to the presentation, that's the change that was needed. So I don't believe that's beyond the sort of skills of sort of basic web editors to be able to make those changes. So if we flick on, thank you.
JavaScript is already included in this view?
Yes, so it's already, what 51Degrees has done is it's looked at the request that's coming in, it's looked at the capabilities of the device, and then it's chosen the right JavaScript snippet for the device. Okay.
It just means that they need to have some HTML knowledge. So
yes.
If you're rolling it out in a bank and the secretary is doing it as well.
Well, exactly, but I mean, moving on to sort of the next steps, and just sort of jumping ahead very quickly, we could quite easily put a checkbox in the GUI to say auto-optimize image. And all that would be doing in the background is just changing the HTML. Okay, so if we just flick on, and that was my backup. So, oh, sorry, back one more. So what we're doing there with the auto image sizes, as we've gone to the first breakpoint, and we've moved to images of 150 kilobytes, 150 pixels in width, we've shrunk the page weight again, this time down by 1.6 megabytes. So we're now under a megabyte, so less than your original first estimate. And of course that will change exactly for the space that the image is required. So as the devices get smaller and smaller, the amount of data that they have to receive is reducing as well. So we've managed to get our magnificent 7 from 2.4 megabytes in size down to under 1 megabyte, just with those simple changes. So we're saving, about 60% of the cost of receiving that page, just by making those changes. Fantastic question, sir. They are. Let's move on. So I think the benefits, just very briefly, are with mobile we have this, what we've termed the golden second. So what happens is the radio's shut down on a mobile device, and they go into standby mode. And as soon as you touch something on the browser, they have to wake up, and they have to do the basic signaling depending on the radio spectrum that's being used and the standards that are in place in order to signal to the base station or signal to the Wi-Fi, etc. And that can take anywhere up to 2 seconds. on Edge or 3G. LTE is a little bit faster because the design of LTE, fourth generation, has sort of tried to speed this up. But we have this delay before TCP data can start being sent from the device. So it's sensible to try and get your response in as quickly as possible. And you've got to accept that there is a period of time where the user is waiting for something to happen before you're even aware that there's something that they want from you. So this really does maximize that golden second. It also has some other benefits as well, because the most powerful CPU, the most known quantity, is doing the resizing, rather than passing the burden out to the little CPUs in the mobile phone. Admittedly, now they're getting a lot more powerful, but they still have a limited battery. And it's very easy to deploy. So if we flick on, some questions that I preempted. So the impact on the server, the images are cached. And there's a folder under app data called cache that's automatically created, and the images are stored under there. They're also tracked, so when they're requested from the cache, we compare them back to the original source to ensure that we don't need to refresh the entity in the cache. What also happens is this activity occurs at the very beginning of the pipeline, so we can hand back to the static handler without actually having to continue doing the resizing in managed code once it's been done the first time. So it's very quick. Just to give you an idea on this laptop I'm using, I had to move my demonstration from Azure to this laptop. I probably have the oldest laptop in the room here. This is an Intel Atom with a single core, running DNN 7.3. Well done, guys. And it's man enough to handle this. What I was going to do in this demonstration, and why we're going to finish so much earlier, is I was going to have you all access my site and create a page and upload some images and have a play with some of this stuff. Maybe set up some of the images you've all taken over the weekend, but the internet's not allowing that. The second point I've got up there is open to abuse. So actually this came out through a conversation with Sean several months ago as we were developing this, and what we added was the third section I showed you earlier. So we can set some parameters. So we can set maximum widths and heights that the system can generate. We can also set up a factor. So the width is divided by that factor, and that then generates a certain sort of breakpoint. So you can say, give me 100, 150, 200, 300, 350 up to 500 or something like that, and it can only generate that number of permutations of image. Because what we don't want to have happen is someone uses this to sort of launch a denial of service attack by creating millions of images. Okay? But it is a trade-off, because of course the higher you set that factor, the more resizing has to be done on the client device, and you're not optimizing. So the optimum value is 1, but you might want to choose where you put that. But I think as the system gets rolled out and used a little bit more, we can look at developing that. My third point is it will work with CDNs. So where the CDN has the ability to send back optimized images with various different query string parameters, like Akamai, I think Edgecast supports this as well. You can put your URLs there, and as long as the back end, the device that's serving the image, can optimize it, then you can use that as well. What's the client impact? Well, it's a piece of client-side JavaScript, but no jQuery is being used. I've got my little icon up there at the top there, no jQuery. So I'm probably in a minority with this view, but I think the kind of overuse of jQuery is a problem, because you've got this 100 kilobyte file that has to be managed every time just for a very small piece of functionality. And in some cases it makes a lot of sense, like in the previous demonstration where you've just got a single page and we're staying on that single page and we're not having to refresh and reparse all the different content. It makes a lot of sense. But for certain pages where all you need is a very small percentage of the actual functionality of jQuery, it doesn't always make sense. So we've got no dependency on jQuery. The snippet stands alone and works in its own right. And where we have minor differences between browsers, we can cater for that by serving a piece of JavaScript that's optimized for that particular type of device. When's this going to be available? It's in DNN 7.3 because it's in the 51 degrees DLL. It's disabled by default, and I've shown you earlier how you can enable it should you choose to. It supports PNG and JPEG at the moment. So the major sort of formats that are used for this kind of image, the images you're worried about that take up a lot of space. You know, icons and stuff like that, you don't necessarily need to kind of worry about using this technology. And we flick on. Sorry? Oh, yeah. Oh, the content delivery network. Yeah. Where they support image resizing. So CDNs, basic CDNs like Azure won't do it, but Akamai have options that allow you to do that. Does it work with Azure and CDN storage? This is where you actually, as Sean was showing yesterday, where rather than storing the portals folder locally to the website, you put it on a CDN or you put it on another location. Well, we haven't worked through all of that yet. So this is for your sort of basic, standard DNN installation. Does it support cropping? Not yet. What about Retina displays? We've got some issues with Retina displays around the way pixel densities are sent back in JavaScript. So the Silk browser used by Amazon, for example, has a few bugs in the way that works. So we're just sort of working through those and just sort of working out how to deal with them in the best way. But we felt it was worth putting this functionality out there. And incidentally, this functionality has been in some of our products for 4 years. So all we're doing is taking stuff that's been around for 4 years and putting it into the Mozilla public license DLLs. And open for questions. What do you think? Yeah, Peter. Yes, it is. It's Mozilla public license. I think it's. Do you guys take our source code, or do you just take the compiled assemblies? Okay, so you just put the deal in. So if you go to Codeplex, for example, and soon GitHub, and we're on GitHub as well, you can get all the source code from there. Sorry.
I have a question about also if the server does the calculations and does the resizing, how does it know what the size has to be if there is supplying side resize of the bits where the images are?
So what happens is, so if I talk through what happens, the very small JavaScript snippet that's being added to the page will, after the load events happened, go through all the image elements on the page through the DOM and look for those that have the attribute data source. And then it will look at those data source URLs and it will look at the ones that have the auto width equals auto. And what it will then do is calculate what the actual width should be, or the height should be, and then it will change the URL, replacing auto with the precise pixel value. And then it will use that new URL to make the request for the image.
So there are two requests and an extra...
Yes, so there's, if I just go back, what you have happen, I sort of glossed over it earlier, but HTTP requests. So in the first case, our base case, we had 35 requests on that page. And the partial case where we were actually explicitly setting the width, we had 35 HTTP requests. But on that final stage, we had one more request. And that extra request was for the empty image that was 1 by 1 pixel. Because certain browsers can accept the source attribute not being populated, but other browsers like Firefox can't. So in order to deal with the differences between browsers, we have to send an empty 1 by 1 pixel in order to get the image to report to the DOM correctly. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's a little bit more complicated if you want to use auto. But you can use this to, if you've got a CSS background, for example, and you've got different media queries where you're varying your breakpoints, you can just request the same background image but just change the width parameter for maybe 4 different breakpoints. And you can just put that into your skin or whatever it might be. So it works very well that way as well. Hello?
Image does Google get, Google's finder? Does it get the empty image or some other size?
Well, it depends how Google deal with the page. So if they process the JavaScript on the page, then they will get the image in the format that their crawler's parsing of the page reports back, basically, like it does for a lot of other, JavaScript that's on the page. So it depends on the crawler. So if the crawler doesn't do that and it just looks at the raw HTML, then they're going to see the raw HTML unedited by JavaScript.
I might have an idea for that, because I know why you have the empty in there. The problem is the browsers load all the pictures before you can run a lot of JavaScript, right? So that's why you put the empty in there, so that it doesn't try to pre-process the pictures. But just as an idea, maybe you could actually just move that with auto into the normal source. So that's what Google would get.
Yeah.
And maybe you could configure on the server side that with auto is always a specific size, which is the more preview size.
Yeah.
And then you could very early in the download cancel all those URLs from loading or replace them with the empty. You know how big they should be.
We've looked at that, and that can work in some cases, but because of the need to make the HTML that's created in the CMS as uniform as possible so that the user doesn't have to deal with that complexity, it becomes a problem, because what happens is, and you certainly don't need the empty.gif, you could put the original URL and that would work very well, but of course what happens is it makes the request for that image before it then makes the request for the optimized image. So what you could do is rather than using empty.gif, you could have a thumbnail image or a very low, like your lowest resolution image. So you could set width equals 30 or something like that. But you'll generate more HTTP requests, which is our concern.
What I mean is that we could configure that with auto on the server
Yeah.
as a predefined thumbnail size.
Yeah, but you will send down, you will have a request per image, not one for all. So that's the difference.
Yeah.
If you have many images to scale like here, 7, you have from 60, 76, 42 requests.
I know, that's why you have to cancel all those URLs early.
Yes.
Otherwise, Google just gets empty pictures.
Right. Okay. So that's the beauty of these sorts of things. This is very much a sort of version 1. Let's see how we can refine it. But what you can do is, if I just go back, let me edit this page, just to make sure I'm. Is you don't have to have empty.gif. So you could have that thumbnail image there so that, as you say, Google gets the right image. The other thing we can do is we can use server-side detection to work out that it is Google. And what we could do is use a bit of Razor, if we were able to, or even build this into the core product so that it knows that it's a crawler. And if it's a crawler, it just sends the default thumbnail image. So we can identify all the crawlers in the 51Degrees database. So you could say, if is crawler, don't do this, and we could deal with it that way. So there's lots of different ways of doing it, but I think we can all agree what we want to try and do is keep the administrative burden as low as possible. But yeah, we need to look into that enhancement. It's a good point.
A revenue killer for a lot of operators is selling, time. The larger the images, the better.
Well, actually, they take a different view. Operators have a massive problem because they're seeing a massive growth in data, and they can't keep up. So the dirty secret is LTE is only going to take us to the next 3 or 4 years, which is why they're investing so heavily in Wi-Fi handoff. So why are mobile network operators putting brands on Wi-Fi hotspots in restaurants and places like that? It's because they want the handoff.
And that's why Vodafone is pricing so high. Now you put out prices
Yeah.
up there.
Yeah.
They're actually pricing the data so high because they need to keep a handle on the bandwidth. They can't cope with the
Yeah.
with the pool.
Yeah. Yeah, so network operators just want data off their network because for them they want the customer paying a contract or they want them paying for their top-up amount, but they want to send as little data as possible and still get the money. Yeah, absolutely the country, yeah. Yeah, so they're very supportive of this, and I mean another project that we've got underway is dealing with video, so the same deal with video. But obviously dynamically re-encoding video is a far harder computational problem. And also creates some licensing issues as well because a lot of the codecs are not free for encoding. So if you take H.264, for example, you get a free decoder for H.264. There's loads of them around. But to encode H.264 requires some quite expensive licensing. Yeah, but it's even the CDNs are really struggling with that problem at the moment. Okay. Does it involve Ada, Daniel? So, any other questions? Any other thoughts? So if I've sort of recapped, we need to look at Google and just look at providing some advice around the Google question. And there's a few enhancements around GIF support, CDN support, making sure we're supporting as many permutations of DNN deployments as possible. It's free. It's Mozilla public license. Well, for example, if we were to solve the Google problem by using the device detection to work out that it was a search engine, for example, to know that it's a search engine accurately requires our premium data, which there's a small license fee for. So, that's, actually totally unbeknown to me before I started this presentation. That could be a good way of turning this into another reason to look at taking either the paid-for versions of .NET Nuke, where, just as a reminder, our data comes as part of all of those versions, the full data set, or you can upgrade through the .NET Nuke store as well.
Any idea of the costs of the Pro Edition?
Of our product? Okay, thank you for your questions. We have two versions of our paid-for data set now that launch this coming week. So there's the premium data file, which is $499, and then we also have an enterprise edition, which is designed for very high-end customers, like our eBay. Some of the big advertising networks now use us to optimize all their images, and that's $1,000 per server. Host as many domains, as many websites as you want. If that doesn't fit with your requirements, come and talk to me. We'll always do your deal.
But that's not the price of the DNN module, right?
The DNN module you're actually buying the data file. So what we sell is the intelligence about the device, not the software. So when you buy the data file, you're buying a subscription, which is updated daily, the enterprise version is updated daily, the premium version is updated weekly, and you're buying a subscription to that data. Yeah. So it's just a standard subscription, like a magazine. It just happens to be a techie data file of every device in the world.
It's not as sexy as a magazine.
Well, depends what you do with it, Sebastian. So thank you very much. If you've got other feedback, please come and see me. We're always trying to improve, we'd like to try and make this better. And the next step is to see if it's useful. How many of you use it? If you do find it useful, you do use it, please let us know. It's always good to get feedback. That's how we evolve. Thank you very much. I'd also like to thank Billy for helping me. Thank you.